The metallic taste of blood and ozone hung heavy in the makeshift medical bay. As Sergeant Eli Brandt worked through the casualties from the morning's brutal skirmish, his hands moved with practiced efficiency, sealing wounds with dermal patches and administering pain suppressors to the groaning soldiers scattered across the cots. The Battle of Kepler's Ridge had been a nightmare 3 hours of plasma fire and explosive charges that left half his unit either dead or wishing they were. Medic Corporal Hayes stumbled through the entrance, supporting something that made Ellie's breath catch. At first glance, she appeared human-tall, lithe, with features that belonged in classical sculptures, but her skin held an ethereal pale blue tint that seemed to shimmer under the harsh medical lights, and cascading golden curls framed her face like liquid sunlight. Her clothing was torn, revealing glimpses of that same luminescent blue flesh beneath. Found her in the eastern sector, Hayes grunted, helping lower her onto the last available cot. Unconscious when we got there. ID tags say she's Valari, some kind of scout. Ellie's training kicked in, though his eyes lingered on her face longer than necessary. The Valari were known for their hostility toward human settlements, their reclusive nature making them ghosts in the outer colonies. Finding one this close to their forward operating base was unusual. Finding one injured and alone was unprecedented. He approached cautiously, medical scanner in hand. Her breathing was shallow but steady, and a nasty gash along her left side seeped translucent fluid that definitely wasn't human blood. As he moved closer, her eyes snapped open, brilliant amber orbs that tracked his every movement with an intelligence that made his pulse quicken. Easy, he murmured, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. I'm Eli. I'm going to help you. She said nothing, but those golden eyes never left his as he began his preliminary examination. Her vital signs were erratic, heart rate elevated, neural activity spiking whenever he touched her. The scanner revealed bone density slightly higher than human normal and muscle fiber composition that was definitely not baseline Homo sapiens. What's your name? He asked softly, cleaning antiseptic around the wound. She flinched at the contact, but remained silent, her jaw set in a stubborn line. Hayes snorted from where he leaned against the doorframe. Don't bother, Doc. Valari don't talk to humans. Probably planning how to gut us all in our sleep. Eli shot him a warning look. That's enough, Corporal. She's injured, not a threat. But as Hayes left, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to this woman than met the eye. Her reactions were too measured, too calculated for someone who was supposed to be unconscious moments ago. And the way she watched him work, it wasn't the glazed stare of someone in shock. It was the focused attention of someone trying to read his intentions. He pulled up a chair beside her cot, close enough to monitor her vitals, but far enough to avoid seeming threatening. Look, I know you can understand me, he said quietly. Your pupils dilate when I speak, and your heart rate changes. I'm not going to hurt you, but I need to treat that wound properly. For a moment, something flickered in her amber eyes, surprise, perhaps, or a flash of vulnerability quickly suppressed. Her lips parted slightly, and he found himself leaning forward, hoping she might finally speak. Instead, she turned her head away, golden curls spilling across the pillow like molten metal. The message was clear. Whatever secrets lay behind those luminous eyes, she had no intention of sharing them with him. But Eli Brandt had always been stubborn about lost causes. As he prepared his instruments for the delicate work ahead, he couldn't help but wonder what could drive someone to such desperate silence. And deep in his chest, a dangerous warmth began to grow, the kind that had nothing to do with medical duty, and everything to do with the way starlight seemed to dance beneath her skin. 3 days passed with the same stubborn silence. Eli found himself spending more time than necessary checking on his mysterious patient, drawn by something he couldn't quite name. She watched everything, the way he moved, how he interacted with other patients, the routine of the medical bay. Her amber eyes held a depth that suggested she was cataloging every detail. But for what purpose? He couldn't fathom. The breakthrough came when he was changing the dressing on her side wound. The gash had been healing remarkably well. Actually, the tissue regeneration was far beyond anything he'd seen in human or documented Valari physiology. As he peeled away the old bandaging, she suddenly tensed, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "It's okay," he murmured, noting her distress. "The healing is progressing beautifully. You'll barely have a scar." But as he gently cleaned around the wound edges with a sterile probe, something caught the light beneath her skin. He leaned closer, squinting at what appeared to be a metallic filament just under the surface. His breath caught as he recognized the distinctive blue glow of a human neural interface. "What the hell?" he whispered, reaching for his deep tissue scanner. That's when she screamed. Not from pain he'd barely touched her, but from pure, animalistic panic. The sound tore through the medical bay like a siren, raw and desperate. She tried to pull away, but her movements were weak, uncoordinated. Tears streamed down her face as she hyperventilated. "No, no, no," she gasped, the first words she'd spoken. Her voice was melodic despite the terror, with an accent he couldn't place. "Please don't look. Please don't see." But it was too late. Through the scanner's display, Eli could see them clearly, a network of human biotech implants threaded through her nervous system. Like silver roots, neural enhancers, memory modulators, genetic stabilizers, all bearing Earth-manufactured serial numbers. His hands trembled as he set down the scanner. "These are human implants," he said quietly, "military grade. But that's impossible. You're Valari." She was sobbing now, curled into herself like a wounded animal. "I wasn't supposed to survive. I was made. I escaped." The words tumbled out between gasps. "Please don't report me. They'll take me back. They'll unmake me." Ellie's world tilted on its axis. The implications crashed over him in waves. This wasn't a Valari scout. This was something far more complex and terrifying. A hybrid, an experiment. Made by whom? He asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. "The Prometheus Project," she whispered. "Human Valari genetic fusion. Designed for infiltration. When we started developing individual thoughts, they called us defective, ordered our termination." His training warred with his conscience as he looked down at her. Protocol demanded he report this immediately. But the woman, the person trembling before him, wasn't a weapon. She was a victim. Gently, he reached out and touched her cheek, wiping away tears that felt surprisingly warm. "What's your name? Your real name. Not whatever designation they gave you." She looked up at him through wet lashes, and for the first time, he saw hope flickering in those amber depths. "I chose Kira. When I escaped, I chose it for myself." "Kira," he repeated, testing the name. It suited her. "I'm not going to report you, but we need to figure out how to keep you safe." The relief that washed over her face was heartbreaking. She reached up, covering his hand with hers where it still rested against her cheek. Her skin was warm, softer than he'd expected, and unmistakably alive in a way that no mere creation should be. "Why?" she asked. "Why would you risk everything for me?" Eli found himself leaning closer, drawn by the vulnerability in her voice and the way the medical bay's lights made her skin seem to glow from within. "Because beneath all this tech, all these implants, you're real. You chose to live, to be more than what they made you. That makes you more human than most humans I know." Something shifted between them in that moment. The air seemed charged with possibilities, dangerous and electric. When she tilted her face up toward his, he saw not the enemy he'd been trained to fight, but a woman who'd risked everything for the simple right to exist. Their lips met softly, tentatively, a first kiss that tasted of salt tears and rebellion. When they parted, her hand was still covering his, and he knew with absolute certainty that his life had just changed forever. "We'll figure this out," he promised, his forehead resting against hers, together. The abandoned supply bunker to levels below the main medical facility became their sanctuary. Eli had managed to transfer Kira there under the pretense of quarantine protocols. Citing concerns about an unknown Valari pathogen, it bought them time and privacy, both of which they desperately needed. "Tell me about before," Eli said softly, watching Kira pace the small space like a caged creature. 3 days in hiding had allowed her strength to return, but with it came a restless energy that made his pulse quicken every time she moved. She paused by the single porthole, golden light from the dying sun painting her blue skin in shades of purple and amber. "There's no before," she said. "My first memory is waking up in a laboratory, fully grown. with knowledge and skills already programmed into my mind. They gave us numbers, not names. I was Infiltration Unit 23. The clinical coldness of it made Ellie's chest tighten. How many others? 47 in my batch. We were taught to mimic Valari culture, to blend in with their scouting parties. The plan was to gather intelligence on their territories and technology. Her voice grew bitter, but they didn't expect us to develop personalities, individual desires, the ability to question orders. Eli rose from his makeshift chair and moved toward her, drawn by the pain in her voice. What happened to the others? Most were terminated when they showed signs of independence. A few of us managed to escape during transport. I don't know if any others survived. She turned to face him, and he saw the raw grief she'd been hiding. I've been running for 2 years, trying to stay ahead of the retrieval teams, without thinking. He reached for her, pulling her against his chest. She stiffened at first, then melted into his embrace with a soft sob that broke his heart. Her body fit against his perfectly, curves and angles aligning in ways that seemed designed by fate rather than science. "You're not running anymore," he murmured into her hair, breathing in the subtle scent that was uniquely hers, something like ozone and flowers. "I won't let them take you." She pulled back to look at him, amber eyes searching his face. "You barely know me. Why would you risk everything?" "Because I'm falling in love with you," he said simply, the words escaping before he could stop them. The admission hung between them, honest and dangerous. Kira's breath caught, and for a moment he worried he'd moved too fast, pushed too hard. Then her hands came up to frame his face, fingers tracing the line of his jaw with wonder. "I don't know if what I feel is real," she whispered. "They programmed so much into us. How do I know if my emotions are genuine or just sophisticated coding?" "Because you chose to feel them," Eli replied, capturing one of her hands and pressing it flat against his chest, over his racing heart. "Because you chose to trust me, to let me see you. That's not programming, that's courage." Her eyes fluttered, closed as she felt his heartbeat beneath her palm. When she opened them again, there was a new heat there, a hunger that made his blood sing. "Show me," she breathed. "Show me what it feels like to be real." This time when their lips met, there was nothing tentative about it. She kissed him with desperate intensity, as if trying to pour all her questions and fears and hopes into the connection between them. He responded in kind, his hands tangling in her golden curls, marveling at how soft they were, how alive she felt in his arms. They moved together toward the narrow cot in the corner, hands exploring, removing the simple medical garments that had been her only clothing. When she stood before him, skin glowing like starlight in the dim emergency lighting, Eli felt his breath catch. She was beautiful beyond words, every line and curve a masterpiece of engineering that had somehow transcended its origins to become art. "You're perfect," he whispered, tracing the constellation of small scars that marked where her implants interfaced with her nervous system. Instead of being repulsed by these signs of her artificial origins, he found them beautiful proof of her struggle, her survival. "I'm broken," she replied, but there was less conviction in her voice now. "No," he said firmly, laying her back on the cot and settling beside her. "You're free." Their lovemaking was slow, reverent, a celebration of connection that neither had expected to find. Every touch was an affirmation of her humanity, every kiss a promise that she was more than the sum of her parts. When she arched beneath him, crying out his name with unguarded pleasure, Eli knew that whatever else she might be, Kira was undeniably, beautifully real. Afterward, they lay entwined in the narrow space, her head pillowed on his chest, fingers tracing idle patterns on his skin. "I never thought I could feel like this," she murmured sleepily. "Safe, cherished, you are," he replied, pressing a kiss to the crown of her head. "Whatever comes next, you are." The alarm klaxons shattered their peaceful morning, red emergency lights flooding the bunker with urgent color. Eli was up and moving before his mind fully processed the sound. Years of military training overriding the comfortable haze of sleep and satisfaction. "What is it?" Kira asked, already alert and reaching for her clothes with fluid efficiency that reminded him of her engineered origins. Eli checked his comm unit, his blood chilling as text scrolled across the screen. "Military intelligence sweep." They're conducting a facility-wide inspection for missing assets. He looked at her grimly. They've found you. Within minutes, they could hear boots echoing in the corridors above, voices calling out orders and coordinates. The hunters had arrived, and they were thorough. There's an access tunnel behind the water recycling unit, Eli said, thinking quickly. It connects to the old mining shafts. If we can reach, no. Kira's voice was calm, resigned. If I run now, they'll tear this place apart looking for me. Your colleagues will be questioned, possibly imprisoned. I won't let innocent people suffer for my freedom. Then what do you suggest? A slow smile spread across her face. Beautiful and dangerous. We hide in plain sight. 20 minutes later, Eli was back in the main medical bay, updating patient files with forced normalcy while his heart hammered against his ribs. Kira lay on a cot in the critical care section, heavily sedated according to her chart, suffering from severe neural trauma that made communication impossible. The inspection team arrived with military precision 5 soldiers in dark uniforms, accompanied by a woman in a lab coat whose cold eyes swept the room like a predator's. Dr. Reeves, according to her identification badge, though Eli doubted that was her real name. Sergeant Brandt, she said, approaching his workstation. I understand you've been treating a Volari patient. That's correct, Eli replied, not looking up from his tablet. Severe combat injuries, complicated by xenophysiology, touch and go. For a while there, I'll need to examine her. Ellie's stomach clenched, but he maintained his professional demeanor. I'm afraid that's not possible. She's in a medically induced coma following emergency neural surgery. Any disruption could cause permanent brain damage. Dr. Reeves's eyes narrowed. Neural surgery? On a Volari. Improvised procedure, Eli said, finally meeting her gaze. Desperate measures to save her life. The neural pathways are extremely fragile right now. He led her to Kira's bedside, where machines beeped and hummed with convincing medical urgency. Kira looked genuinely unconscious, her face peaceful beneath the breathing mask. Golden hair spread across the pillow. The neural monitors showed carefully calibrated readings that Eli had programmed to mimic severe trauma recovery. Dr. Reeves studied the displays with obvious expertise. These readings are unusual. Volari neurology is poorly understood, Eli replied smoothly. I've had to adapt human protocols. It's been a learning experience. For several tense moments, the woman stared down at Kira's still form. Eli held his breath, waiting for the moment when their deception would crumble. Then Dr. Reeves turned away with obvious disappointment. If her condition changes, you will notify me immediately, she ordered. Of course, after the inspection team left, Eli waited a full hour before administering the stimulant that would wake Kira. Her eyes fluttered open, immediately finding his face with relief and something deeper gratitude mixed with growing love. How did you know they would believe it? She asked when they were safely alone again. Eli smiled, brushing a strand of golden hair from her face. Because they expect to find a weapon, not a person. They can't conceive of someone like you choosing love over programming. That night, in the dark privacy of the bunker, they made love with desperate intensity, as if trying to compress a lifetime of feeling into stolen hours. Kira's responses were uninhibited now. Her earlier fears about the authenticity of her emotions burned away by the fire. They created together. I love you. She gasped against his mouth as he moved within her, her nails digging into his shoulders. Real or programmed, I don't care anymore. What I feel is mine. I love you too, he replied, losing himself in the amber fire of her eyes. All of you, every part. Later, as they lay tangled in sweat-dampened sheets, Kira traced the outline of his chest with one finger. They'll be back, she said quietly. Dr. Reeves suspects something. Then we'll be ready for them, Eli. Her voice carried a note of warning. If you help me escape, you'll be branded a traitor. You'll lose everything, your career, your future, your freedom. He caught her hand and brought it to his lips, pressing a kiss to her palm. I've already found everything I need. But there are others, she continued, her voice gaining strength. Other hybrids still in their laboratories, still being tortured and programmed. If we run, we abandon them. Eli felt something shift in his chest, a crystallization of purpose he'd never experienced before. Then we don't just run, we fight." Kira's smile was fierce and beautiful. "Now you're starting to sound like one of us. I am one of you," he realized, the truth of it settling into his bones. We're all prisoners of their system in one way or another. The only difference is you chose to break free. Outside their sanctuary, the hunt continued. But inside, in the space between heartbeats and shared breath, a revolution was being born. The end came sooner than expected. Eli was updating medical logs when his comm unit chimed with an encrypted message. From an unknown sender. "They know. Reeves is coming with a full extraction team. 20 minutes. Trust the one with silver eyes." A friend, his blood turned to ice as he read the words again. Someone inside the Prometheus project was helping them. But there was no time to wonder about motivations. 20 minutes to save the woman he loved from a fate worse than death. He found Kira in the bunker, already dressed and alert. The message had been sent to her as well. "Silver eyes?" Eli asked, checking his sidearm. "Another hybrid," Kira replied, her voice tight with hope and fear. "Some of us learn to communicate in code, to watch out for each other. If someone's still in the system." The emergency klaxons began wailing again. But this time they knew it wasn't a drill. Boots thundered through the corridors, and sharp voices barked orders that echoed off metal walls. "Facility lockdown in progress. All personnel remain in quarters. Repeat, facility lockdown in progress." Eli grabbed Kira's hand. The mining tunnels, now. They ran through service corridors he'd memorized during his months stationed here, avoiding the main arteries where search teams would focus their efforts. Behind them, the sounds of systematic searching grew, closer, doors being kicked in, rooms being cleared with military precision. The entrance to the old mining complex was hidden behind a maintenance panel in the deepest part of the facility. As Eli worked to override the locks, Kira kept watch, her enhanced senses picking up sounds and movements he couldn't detect. "They're close," she whispered urgently. The panel finally yielded with a soft hiss, revealing a narrow passage that disappeared into darkness. They squeezed through just as the first search team rounded the corner behind them. The mining tunnels were a maze of abandoned shafts and forgotten chambers, carved out decades ago when this asteroid had been actively harvested. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on rough-hewn walls as they navigated by memory and instinct. "This way," Kira said, taking the lead. Her enhanced night vision gave her an advantage in the gloom, and Eli followed her graceful form as she moved through the tunnels like a dancer. They'd been running for 10 minutes when they saw the light. Ahead, not the harsh glare of emergency systems, but the soft white glow of a handheld beacon. A figure emerged from the shadows, and Eli felt Kira's sharp intake of breath. The newcomer was clearly another hybrid, pale skin with a subtle green tint, silver hair that seemed to move with its own life, and most notably, eyes like liquid mercury that reflected light with unnatural intensity. "Unit 17, Kira breathed. "I thought you were dead." "Not dead," the hybrid replied, their voice carrying harmonics that suggested vocal modifications. "Evolved. I chose the name Sage when I learned to think for myself. I've been working inside the system, documenting everything, waiting for the right moment." "Why help us now?" Eli asked, hands still resting on his weapon. Sage smiled, and the expression was both beautiful and alien. "Because Kira represents something they didn't expect, the capacity for love. If we can prove that hybrids are capable of genuine emotion, genuine choice, we can expose the project for what it really is." "And what's that?" Kira asked. "Slavery," Sage replied simply. "They created us to be perfect soldiers, spies, assassins. But they gave us the one thing that makes slavery impossible: consciousness. Now they're trying to correct their mistake by eliminating us." The sound of approaching boots echoed through the tunnels, growing steadily louder. Sage pressed a data chip into Ellie's hand. "Everything's on there," they said urgently. "Project files, video documentation, financial records. Get it to the Colonial Ethics Committee. Make them see what's being done in humanity's name." "What about you?" Kira asked. "I'm going back. There are 37 hybrids still in the labs. I won't abandon them." Sage's silver eyes met Ellie's with surprising warmth. "Take care of her. She's more precious than she knows." Before either of them could protest, Sage vanished back into the shadows, leaving them alone with the weight of truth and the sound of hunters drawing near. The next few hours blurred together in a rush of adrenaline and desperate flight. They made it to the surface through an old excavation shaft, emerging under the alien stars of the Kepler system. A small transport waited in a hidden canyon more of Sage's careful planning. As they lifted off, Eli saw the searchlights sweeping the facility below, trying to track their escape. But they were free, carrying with them the key to exposing one of humanity's darkest secrets. 6 months later, Eli stood before the Colonial Ethics Committee, watching as senators and representatives struggled to process the evidence he'd presented. The data chip had contained horrors beyond imagination, footage of hybrids being created, trained, and systematically murdered when they showed signs of independent thought. Public outrage was swift and absolute. The Prometheus Project was disbanded, its architects prosecuted for crimes against sentience. Most importantly, legislation was passed recognizing hybrid consciousness and granting them full personhood under colonial law. But the real victory was quieter, more personal. On a frontier world called Haven, Eli and Kira had built a sanctuary for escaped hybrids, a place where artificial beings could learn what it meant to be real. Their love had become a beacon, proof that consciousness transcended the circumstances of its creation. Standing on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and purple, Eli marveled at how far they'd come. Kira emerged from the house behind him, her blue skin warm against his back as she wrapped her arms around him. "Any regrets?" she asked, the question they'd posed to each other countless times. "Only that we can't save them all," he replied, leaning into her embrace. "We will," she said with quiet certainty. "One by one, we'll bring them home." In the distance, another transport was landing more refugees from the project, guided to safety by the underground network Sage had established. Each rival was a victory, each life saved, a testament to the power of choosing love over programming. Eli turned in Kira's arms, losing himself in those amber eyes that had first captured his heart in a makeshift medical bay. When he kissed her, he tasted freedom and hope and the infinite possibility of a future built on choice rather than design. They had found something under her skin that day, not just implants or artificial tissue, but the essence of what it meant to be truly alive. And in saving her, Eli had discovered a truth that would change humanity forever. Real was not about origin, but about choice, and the choice to love, to hope, to fight for something greater than yourself. That was the most human thing of all.